This programme.
I'm Jonah Hull in Johannesburg, South Africa, where we meet some of the victims of so-called corrective rape, the violent sexual abuse by men of lesbian women with the aim of turning them straight.
And the latest from the Australian state that is still struggling to recover from record flooding.
Hello again. Well, let's start off with the weather over Australia, because as well as some cyclones, we're also seeing some torrential downpours elsewhere. It's in the southeast corner where we've got this thick blanket of cloud that's gradually marching its way across us. Torrential downpours out of this and a few areas of flooding as well. This system's still going to be with us as we head through the remainder of Saturday, but not into Sunday. Sunday, it should eventually begin to clear away towards the east. Elsewhere, though, we'll still have lots of wet weather around. Darwin still not too far away from the remains of our cyclone Carlos, so yet more heavy downpours still to come here. And then this circulation here is another tropical cyclone. This one's Diane. Gradually it's running its way southwards, but it's going to continue to throw lots of wet weather across Western Australia over the next few days, and there could be some flooding here as well. Now, meanwhile, while all of that is going on around Australia, further east, we've also got a cyclone developing here as well. Now, this one appears to be running its way towards the southeast, so hopefully we'll avoid Fiji. Here it's still going to be very, very wet and pretty windy over the next few days, but hopefully we won't see the eye of that storm hit any of the islands. A little bit further north and for us in China, it's rather wet at the moment and not that warm for Hong Kong either, only getting to 17 degrees.
Information travels in many ways. Opinions constantly formed. Knowledge passes in an instant.
If you want to communicate with those shaping the headlines, this is your chance to ask questions directly to the people making the news. Riz Khan, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Hello again, our top stories here on Al Jazeera. The US has vetoed a UN Security Council resolution that condemns illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Witnesses in Libya have told Al Jazeera at least 70 people have been killed during the protests across the country. Bahrain, security forces have attacked protesters for a second time. Dozens of people were wounded, some critically, when forces opened fire on a crowd. Meanwhile, President Barack Obama has called on Bahrain to exercise restraint following this latest violence. It's a tough line for the US president to take. He still needs to balance the calls for democracy with America's geopolitical interests in the region. Kimberly Halkett reports from Washington.
It is a chaotic scene. This time in Bahrain's capital, soldiers opened fire on anti-government demonstrators. As the injuries and casualties mount, there are pleas for help.
We call for an urgent call for everybody in the world, United States, European Union, all the Arab leagues, all the Arab countries. Please do come here to help us.
President Barack Obama was not in Washington on Friday, but after days of silence, the White House finally released a written statement attributed to him. In it, he writes, "I'm deeply concerned by reports of violence in Bahrain, Libya, and Yemen. The United States condemns the use of violence by governments against peaceful protesters in those countries and wherever else it may occur." Administration officials are watching events in Bahrain with a certain amount of concern. The country is home to the U.S. Fifth Fleet, which is responsible for all naval forces in the Gulf. As a result, the U.S. State Department urged the authorities in Bahrain to show restraint.
This is a second situation where security forces have responded aggressively to protesters, and there's been an unacceptable loss of life.
Still, as the Middle East continues to swell with protest and its political landscape shifts, cracks in U.S. foreign policy in the region are being further exposed. Despite its military base in Bahrain, the White House seems to be having little influence in stemming the violence there.
U.S. policy in the region is basically being made on an ad hoc basis, and I think that makes it very difficult. I think the White House is scrambling, and they obviously have to consult with a lot of their allies, particularly in the Gulf, because as opposed to Egypt, we're now in a place of very, very great strategic significance for the United States.
The Obama administration finds itself in a tough spot once again as it tries to balance calls for political reform from states like Libya, Yemen, and Bahrain, while still managing its own geostrategic interests in those countries. Kimberly Helkett, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, the unrest has once again raised concerns that Bahrain's Grand Prix might be cancelled. Formula One's first race of the new season is due to be held on March the 13th, and the Formula One boss, Bernie Ecclestone, has been optimistic that the race will still go ahead, but that was before this latest round of violence. Ecclestone has said he'll now wait and see if the situation improves before making a final decision next Tuesday or Wednesday. Now, campaign groups in South Africa say women in that country are more likely to be raped than taught to read. In 2009, more than 68,000 sexual offences were reported. That's 1 every 8 minutes. In the first of a two-part series on sexual crime in South Africa, Jonah Hull looked at the problem of so-called corrective rape.
They will say I'm trying to be a boy, that I even steal their girlfriends. So no wonder I got raped. Serves me right, that's what they'll say.
Last April, in a South African township, Millicent Geiker became a victim of what's been called corrective rape. She's a lesbian attacked for being un-African by a man wanting to turn her straight.
He locked the door and then we fought. Because he's a man, he overpowered me by strangling me. I tried to scream, but my voice was too low.
Campaign groups say at least 500 lesbian women are the victims of corrective rape each year. More than 30 are known to have been murdered. Many more attacks are thought to go unreported. Only a fraction of cases result in prosecution, still fewer in conviction. That's because of prejudice among the police themselves. Toomey blacked out as she was beaten and raped by a drunk man outside a bar.
And then the police, they didn't even give me the attention that I wanted, Instead, I was like a joke to them, in such a way that, okay, they were like, I don't know, maybe they thought that I want to be a guy,
The most basic need is justice that we would want to be addressed, because you find that perpetrators are never held, responsible for these cases, and therefore these things keep on, perpetuating because there's nothing that's been done. Therefore, well, it's not serious cases, maybe.
Millicent's alleged attacker was arrested and then released on bail of less than